Welcome everybody to episode 5 of Life Narrated. We are now in video. I don't know if the video is going to stay. Today's episode is going to be about secret societies. My name is Emily and I am not a conspiracy theorist.
I'm Matthew, the Grand Blade of the Dragon Lodge of the Eastern Coast of the United States.
He's creepy.
And I am Lauren, and I'm just here drinking coffee in what is definitely my own bedroom.
Okay, so we decided on secret societies for today's episode, just because they're everywhere, and actually our zombie episode kind of talked about secret societies, didn't it?
Well, like Haitian zombies and like the Voodoo Society.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. I forgot most of that.
Yeah. Well, I actually meant to research the Voodoo Secret Society, but I ended up not doing that because it's scary. Once you start researching secret societies, it goes on forever. And ever.
It turns you into a conspiracy theorist.
What?
It turns you into a conspiracy theorist.
Yes, it does. And actually, our brother has an interesting thought about that. He said that we're pattern matching animals, which is true. Anthropologists go on that a lot about us being pattern matching, but that like the seeing of conspiracy theories everywhere is kind of this pattern matching in overdrive. So you see patterns and patterns don't
and
exactly.
symbols, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been pattern matching. Let me tell you, pattern matching.
Oh. And there are some, and I think one of the ways that we can start this conversation off most interestingly, is just to like name a bunch of things that we consider to be secret societies. Like Emily did some research on secret societies, so you would probably know most out of all of us. But let's name a few that we consider to be secret societies, and then we'll try and figure out what elements they all have in common as a starting point for this conversation. And we'll go from there. How about that?
That sounds good. Why don't you go first, Mr. Secret Society?
Well, obviously, the Lodge of the Grand Dragon, huge. No, like the, let's go the Freemasons.
Okay, Freemasons. Lauren, what can you tell us about the Freemasons?
Well, so the Freemasons started back after started around like the Founding Fathers, like I think before they came over to the United States. And also, like, complete disclaimer, this is just shit that I've learned from my dad. Sorry for the swear word. Is it
Okay.
Okay, you can edit that out later. You can just take this whole chunk out.
She learned from the Freemason.
The Freemasons. That's what I really want to apologize to for saying the S word. So like before they, in Europe and stuff, the Knights Templar, which was more of like the Crusades stuff, and like they were on their mission for the Holy Grail. The Freemasons, I guess, kind of were their contemporaries, is my understanding. And they were more about like for example, like a lot of the founding members of the Freemasons were the founding fathers of America. So like Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and all of those guys, and it was more about slowly like kind of like they were in positions of power, and the whole idea was that we need to be more democratic thinking. And so like one of the things that my dad told me, my dad is a Mason, if I didn't mention that, is that back at that time the Masons didn't organize the Boston Tea Party, but there were a lot of Masons present. So they were very like forward thinking as far as like America as its own entity and separating from England and all that stuff. Whereas like today, Masons are about charity, and I guess they can be, depending, like, so my dad's been a Mason since I can remember, and he's held several of the offices and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've gone to those ceremonies, and that was like super cool and surreal, and I really enjoyed learning about it. But essentially, like, what their main focus now is like the Oxford Orphanage,
Right.
And in North Carolina, like they donate like tons of money and do all this stuff for the orphanage and stuff, and so it's really become more about like social change and charity work within one's community.
Okay.
And it's definitely, I mean, they call it a lodge, and it's definitely just for men, so there is this like camaraderie and this like idea of getting together, that like like a community for guys to do stuff, but it is still like steeped in symbology and
Secrets.
yeah. Well, and so like something really cool, and I remember, so this is like a story, sorry, so that's kind of like the explanation of like my personal knowledge with that specifically. The thing I remember asking my dad was, so you have like all these different positions, like you have the Grand Master of the Lodge, and then like secretary and treasurer, and there's different kind of positions.
Mm-hmm.
And like currently, like my dad's been the treasurer for like a really long time, but at one time he was the master, and it rotates. I think it's democratic. I think they vote, and whatever. But I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, why can't girls be in it? And he said that there was one woman Mason, and so one of the positions I'm trying to remember, he's like the man-at-arms or something. He gets a sword. And the whole idea is that during the meeting, he's supposed to stand outside the door. Like, he's a member of the lodge, but he's not supposed to be inside the room. He stands outside guarding it. And if somebody comes up, he's supposed to run them through. So now, like, even now, like, that person still gets a sword.
Yeah.
And it's obviously, like, ceremonial. It's not, they don't murder people anymore. But he told me that this woman, I can't remember her name, but she was, like, standing outside the door listening.
Yeah.
And so they inducted her into it so that she had to keep their secrets.
Oh.
So, like, the only other option was that they killed her. And I was like, holy cow, like, I can't believe that's a thing. So there was one lady Mason.
Wait, did this happen recently, or this happened a long time ago?
No, this would have happened a long time ago. So, like, this happened, so I guess in the context of our conversation today, this would have happened back when the Masons were still kind of, like, underground, and they were much more, I guess, undermining certain British laws and things. So like I said, it's like they didn't organize the Boston Tea Party, but a lot of them were there. So, like, the idea of it being a secret society would be like, okay, you're going to be there? Okay. Like, I'll meet you at this time, and then we'll do it together. So, keeping those kinds of things.
In my opinion, the creepiest thing about the Masons is that there is a Masonic lodge, like, every 5 feet in D.C., which is where I live. There's two within walking distance of my father's house, and on my way to work, I think I pass about 3, and I work downtown, so it's just there. And then there's license, like I Snapchatted Matthew a picture of someone's license plate with a Masonic symbol on it earlier this week. I don't remember when, and you just see them.
There's one in every single city.
What?
There's one Masonic lodge in every single city. Like, I guarantee it.
It's creepy. It's creepy.
Yeah. So we talked about these a little bit. Let's think of some other ones that we can talk about.
Yeah, so another one is, let's see, Skull and Bones Society, which is a very famous one.
About that one.
What?
I don't know anything about that one.
Well, it's so basically Yale, Yale, the university, has a lot of secret societies in it. It's kind of a tradition there, I understand, that, like, they have secret societies that the students are tapped to join while they're there.
Kind of like fraternities, but secret.
Right, exactly. And they have tombs where they hang out and they, plan things. And apparently I think there's a parade and they have, like, floats and things. I don't really understand. I didn't go to Yale, so I don't know. But this one society called the Skull and Bones Society is very famous. 3 of our presidents have been in this society, and it's supposed to be a breeding ground for the CIA. So,
So it's kind of like espionage, kind of like that.
Right. Well, what I know about this is very vague because it's from, like, a television show and from books that I've read about it, so it's not like 100% accurate. But what I
want it to be.
Yeah, so what I understand is that they have like a tomb, and they plan pranks, and they plan activities, and then when they graduate, they connect with older members. The entire Bush family, by the way, is in the Skull and Bones Society. I think there was another president who was in the Skull and Bones Society. And so it's hereditary. You get in because your parents were in, and sometimes they tap new people. It's totally creepy.
Wasn't there a movie called The Skulls that was like...
It could be.
Brian Phillippe or some shit?
I mean, have you ever seen Gilmore Girls?
Yes.
There's a part where she meets this guy who's in the Life and Death Brigade. So that was like a fictionalized version of the Skull and Bones Society.
Adorable.
It is adorable. So it was it's very interesting, especially their connection to the CIA, because apparently that is where all of their operatives come from. And
wow.
Yeah.
So we got the Skull and Bones, we got the Freemasons. How about like the...
Now, do you have one?
Conversation about this with my roommate, who was supposed to join us but is sick.
Yeah.
He was saying that he doesn't really think gangsters and organized crime should be considered secret societies.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows they exist, and they sometimes even have like offices. But then again, so do the Freemasons. So.
Right.
I mean,
well, I actually have in our dear Wade Davis's book that we were using for the zombie thing. He has a good definition of secret societies: a voluntary or, in rare cases, involuntary association whose members possess by virtue of their membership some knowledge of which non-members are ignorant. So basically they have a secret. And I think that kind of covers it, because he goes on to talk about how a lot of societies are not secret in their existence, but they're secret in their practices and their endeavors, their goals.
But that would make almost everything a secret society. Like, by that definition, like our little podcast would be a secret society.
Well, no, because we're not like secretive about our goals. We're here to talk about narrations and culture. So.
Well, and I think when you look at the
stuff.
Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, it's like their intentions have to be really transparent, because they get money, like donations, and they get money from government things and blah blah blah. So.
It's funny.
Mr. Order of the Arrow over there, their ceremonies are all secret. Look at him. That's his symbol of.
You know what this thing right here is? Triangle. Vigil Honor Member. What's up, fools?
No.
Highest Order of the Arrow rank you can achieve by virtue of your.
Who's trying to throw us off the trail because he's society.
I'm embedded in your little group. There's one of us everywhere. Just throw everyone off. There's actually an umbrella society of all secret societies, and that umbrella society's job is just to make sure that no one else figures out any of the members in the secret society.
Yeah.
The Grand Order of All Things Known is what it's called.
The Grand Order of All Things Unknown.
Secret
right.
Arrow.
Well, I happen to agree with you about mafias, because I think I think they can be considered secret societies, but that it's a whole nother aspect of it that is different. I actually kind of want to do a podcast on mafias at some point, so.
I think that I gotta say we're talking about like symbology and like finding symbols and things and all that stuff. Like the mafia, but especially like with like gangsters and tattoos and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that, like the symbols and like the idea of like, oh, I don't know exactly what you did, but I can look at your knuckles and I can see X, Y, and Z and know that, like, you're related to something or other. Just that kind of, like, paranoia, but, like, serious symbols embedded into a culture.
Right. Well, there's, like, for instance, the Yakuza. That's one of the things that I was trying to decide if they were a secret society, because they began, supposedly they began as ninjas.
Ninjas?
Yeah, and ninjas is also in this book as being a secret society, but they're basically assassins. But they're built off of a group of families who study ninjutsu. So it's like, yes, it is a society, and they are secret. But I guess there's a difference between societies that are secret and secret societies. I don't know. I don't know. Let it stir for a second. Oh, so the Yakuza, supposedly, in ancient Japan, there was the shogun,
Mm-hmm.
and he made what is it? Which shogun was it? Totally gonna butcher this. It's gonna be awesome. So one of the shogunates was very peaceful, and so he didn't have a lot of use for the samurai. And so the samurai became kind of these roving thugs that were trying to get money from villagers. And supposedly the Yakuza grew up around these villages to protect them from the samurai, from the Ronin.
Well, that's what they would have you believe.
Right, exactly. But it's more likely that they are actually descendants from the samurais themselves. So
Yeah,
yeah. So I don't know, because they are very famous for having tattoos and
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of symbology there too.
yeah, so and Russian prison gangs also, they're very much like the Yakuza in that the tattoos like denote certain offices and things like that. And
Or like even like where you went to prison and like how much time you spent there.
well, I bet like the other, well, like surely the MS-13s and the Bloods and the Crips all have their own, internal history symbols and tactics and things. I'm sure they all do.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, well, for the purposes of this conversation, let's just say that mafias and organized crime are going to be a separate discussion, just because we have so many other, crazy things going on. For instance, the one exception I would say is I found out about the Heaven and Earth Societies. They're very interesting. And this was a name given to all of these little fraternal orders that sprung up in Hong Kong when the British were ruling. And the British kind of just called them all Heaven and Earth Societies. And they were grassroots political resistance. Originally, they were against the Qing to restore the Ming Dynasty. It kind of they would just have like, I guess you could call them terrorist actions. They'd break things and have protests. The most supposedly they were the remnants of the monks from the Shaolin Temple. Do you guys know that story of the Shaolin Temple where they taught Kung Fu? And then the government, they kind of saved the Qing dynasty, but when the Qing fell, the Ming were like, they need to go, and kind of raise the whole temple. So this is Shaolin monks. And the 5 monks that survived kind of started these societies wherever they went and taught Kung Fu. And so sorry, what?
That's kind of cool. Like, it's I'm imagining a movie where it's basically Footloose, except instead of dancing, it's Kung Fu that is banned.
Yeah, well, it was banned for a long time. Shaolin Kung Fu was
No.
red. It was no. But there's another level to this story, because the Heaven and Earth Societies, they became, once the Ming were overthrown by the British, right? They no longer had a purpose, so they turned to crime. And instead of being called the Heaven and Earth Societies, they actually called themselves the Triads, who are actually a very, prolific gang these days.
Yes.
So,
Huge drug lords, right?
what?
Like they're like huge drug lords and
Yeah, drugs and I think human trafficking are their main business now. Protection racket, well, in Chinatowns across America, and they're known for their hatchets. So, but I thought it was interesting that this like legit secret society to overthrow the Ming Dynasty, like, became a huge global crime syndicate.
I mean, I think it's probably more common than. I think it's like very common, probably. Like we were talking, like that's a good way for like think about Anonymous, right? They do the same thing. Like they start off as like a grassroots collective, and now they're people consider them terrorists.
Yeah.
Cyber. I mean, they still do like a lot of political stuff, but like maybe 20 years from now, what will they be doing? I bet they become like a cyber gang.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about Anonymous that I found interesting. Like some things they do, I agree with. For like they'll raid a white supremacist site and just go crazy on it, and that I agree with. But then they'll do things like terrorize some poor person that happened to speak ill of them, and
Right. I mean, they're unregulated.
Yeah.
They just do what they want, basically, which I appreciate. But also, like, I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of their ire.
It's true. Yeah.
There seems to be like a common theme of like secret societies were secretive in the beginning because they started off seemingly as either kind of like Matt was saying about Anonymous, is like kind of this grassroots like civil discontent, or in a position of opposition to something really oppressive.
Right.
And then kind of throughout the years, like they've become like, yeah, like, you were talking about like, oh yeah, they, destroyed their temple, so the 5 kung fu masters went and taught kung fu, and they were very secretive because that was opposed. But now they're like drug lords. So,
Yeah.
So there's like this like some kind of change, like where like what they were doing has evolved, and for their survival, they were secretive in the beginning, and now they're secretive because they're like criminals.
Well, I think
it kind of goes the opposite way. Like you're talking about the Masons who are doing like civil disobedience, and now they're like really known. And I'm talking about like in modern times, like more known for their like charity work and just being like a very
that's an interesting
kind of thing.
When a secret society, the reason that it's formed, when that goes away, it's very telling to see which direction they turn, because a lot of them, like the Yakuza, like the Heaven and Earth Society, they've turned towards crime, whereas the Freemasons, by all accounts, apparently, are not. And they do charity work, so it's interesting to see that. I don't know. Let's see what else we have.
Like fraternities and stuff, it's like fraternities can be like college fraternities can be like really awesome places for people to like make great friends, and what I was not in a sorority or fraternity, so I'm just guessing because
Should we consider, for the purposes of this discussion, should we consider fraternities and sororities secret societies? I think it's a good question.
Typically, I wouldn't, but I know someone who's in a sorority, and it's like a secret society. Like
it has a lot of the same features.
Yeah.
She's very serious, and she's not in college anymore. That's been years, and she talks about her sorors, and she talks about, oh, we're going to do this today with my sorors, and like she literally lives in this society.
I have a friend who I think I don't think she does it full time.
Right.
But basically she works for the chapter.
Right.
Like, so it's not like a full time thing, but like if she could make it full time, she would. And so she goes and like does events like all over different schools and stuff, like, and and it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think what freaks me out about that sort of thing is like that whole mentality of like, oh, you're drinking the punch, like, and this, but also I think especially with sororities and fraternities, this idea of like exclusion that I think kind of also translates into secret societies. It's like, okay, we have a secret, we got to keep it. Just like sororities and fraternities, you have to rush.
Yeah.
Decide who gets to join and who doesn't.
I would definitely say
that there's some kind of something that we're trying to keep from you.
Yeah.
Might not be that deep.
One of the main things that I thought was so intriguing about secret societies, like why they're so popular in our imagination and just in general, is because of hidden knowledge. Hidden knowledge. I mean, that's kind of like number one in marketing, is that if you can give somebody a peek into hidden knowledge, or like knowledge that someone else doesn't have, like click on this link and you'll see behind the scenes this, and and that's kind of how a lot of social marketing goes. People want what other people don't have, especially knowledge and like experiences. So I think that's
find out what the #1 superfood to lose weight.
Right, yeah, and like this weird trick that nobody knows. Click here to find out. Like that's the extreme version, obviously, but it's very interesting.
Cosmopolitan magazine.
Yeah,
This is Cosmos, a secret society.
Cosmo. I feel like you can't belong to Cosmo.
Yes, you can. You can subscribe.
Subscribe.
No, yeah, like the hidden knowledge, I think is, I mean, like, so like when we were talking about the Masons and stuff, like, so my dad, I'm gonna probably butcher this, but anyways, it was, he was talking about how the Master of the Lodge like sits at the north, which is like you think of like the Northern Star, it's supposed to be like where like guidance and like wisdom comes from, and then somebody sits in the west and somebody sits in the east or whatever, but nobody sits in the south.
Because that's where trouble comes from.
That's where like darkness and ignorance and or whatever, and that like just talking about like those like that symbols that get like passed down.
That's interesting.
And still, it's like and still exist even though they're not really part of what.
So speaking of secret societies and secret knowledge, I have before me.
What is it?
Real deal ceremony for the arrow.
Are we about to blow up some?
Yeah, we are.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
This is, I used to be in the Order of the Arrow. I still am. That's how it works.
Uh-huh.
And I was in the ceremonies team, and so I don't know if you've ever seen it, probably not, but during our ordeal, so the ordeal is like the induction into the secret, into the Order of the Arrow, and they have a bunch of ceremonies they do that are secret.
Mm.
And I have one here, and I will read you my portion of it. I used to play a character called Mateu. It's all based on Indian myth, and it's kind of appropriate-y. But it was fun. I got to dress up with like a headdress and stuff, and it was fun.
That's super sensitive.
Appropriate-y, like I said, but
Inappropriate.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to read this.
Okay.
Long ago, when bear and bison swarmed the forest prairie, the great and mighty chieftain looked with love upon his children, saw them striving, fighting, battling the evil that abounded, and he spoke and said this wise: You who love the haunts of nature, love the moonlight on the water, love the sunshine on the meadow, love the shadow of the forest, love the wind among the bushes, ever murmuring, ever sighing, love the rushing of great rivers through their palisades of pine, love the thunder in the mountains, whose innumerable echoes leap and bound from crag to cliffside. Listen these admonitions for your guidance on your journey. I, Mateu, heard this message whispered on the western mountains, where the sun from eve to morn never set. While all beneath me I climbed and then stood listening, slept in darkness, slept in shadow. You need seek no rocky summit. These high places are within you. All the natural world around you shows you clearly your reflection. This ordeal is but a pattern for a journey whose directions are the whispers, urgings, promptings, deep within your heart and spirit. Therefore, from this moment onward, till you take the obligation, strictly keep the pledge of silence. Hours spent in thoughtful silence help us make the right decisions, more than days and days of talking. Help us feel the cords of sunlight, tying all the world together. Soon you will be bound as brothers in this great and honored order, but only if you are determined to fulfill its obligations out of love for one another. Till then, let silence, like a bowstring, and then at this point I'll pull a bowstring out of my sleeve. Till then, let silence, like a bowstring, bind you each to every other, closer when the bow is tested.
What?
And there's like a bunch more pages, and basically each of the characters gives the new inductees a different task to fulfill. There's silence, there's not eating a lot, and there's a lot of work.
What? We've just been inducted into a secret society. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you haven't. You haven't done shit.
So I'm gonna take a moment.
Preview.
I'm gonna take a moment to point out that I got dumped. I'll use the word dumped by the guy who's gonna take me to prom because he was in the Order of the Arrow and they planned some kind of like ceremony thing on the same day as prom. So he asked me to prom, and I went and bought a dress and did all this stuff, and then he turned around and was like, "Oh, I can't because I got this like Boy Scout Order of the Arrow thing to go to." And so
now you know
Order of the Arrow.
Understandable.
But it wasn't until just now that I realized, he's duty bound. He had no choice.
Dude bound. I like that. Dude bound. It's not.
Like hunting him down, like the whispering buffalo parts on.
Yeah, whispering buffalo parts. They got bows and arrows, man. They would have taken him out, and he would have never seen it coming.
Oh my god, that's so serious.
Like our prom picture would have been like me, like covered in blood on one side and like an arrow.
Oh my god. That's so...
That would have happened. I call you Order the Arrow for nothing, man.
Order the Arrow.
Expert marksman.
Definitely secret society. I would definitely call that a secret society.
Yeah.
Like children to be quiet. Like, oh my god. Like.
Yeah, I mean, it's all. I don't know. Actually, I might get in trouble for showing you guys that. Probably not. But the point being, yeah, no one watches this thing. But the point is,
Emily, you destroy this. You destroy this now.
It's on YouTube. It's being broadcast right now, guys.
It's a secret society within the Boy Scouts, and you get in by being a real cool dude, basically.
Really?
Yeah, it's brotherhood, selfless work, and something else. It shows how much I've been involved in the last 10 years. I used to be very involved in it.
Yeah.
I'm going to point out having this stream live on YouTube is going to, like, rain down the serious, like, secret society people and conspiracy theorists. Like, we are dead in the water.
If we were a really popular podcast, I would maybe consider, like, maybe 3 people have seen it, so it's all right.
Like, my dad doesn't count. Also, please don't ever let my dad know.
I think it's funny that where I work, we have a very extensive library, and on the shelf with all the Secret Society books, there is, an Atlas of Secret Society on one side, and on the other side is the Boy Scout manual.
Huh.
So I just thought that was very funny.
Yeah, man, it is kind of like a secret society. I mean, Boy Scouts is not, but definitely the Order of the Arrow, and I mean, it's kind of. But even Boy Scouts is kind of.
Yeah, I'd say it is. I find it very interesting, though. Back to the Freemason thing we were talking about, that South is where is like ignorance and darkness, because in like literary traditions, that's like if a character is heading south, that always means that they're going into trouble,
like into danger.
Yeah.
Or like the East too, or not the East, but like the West, right? Because that's like the setting sun, like that's where the sun dies.
Yeah, but like that's not a common theme. Like I understand, like Egyptian mythology, that is, but like other than that, it's always south, heading south, and I just don't understand why. But I don't know. Anyway,
like 6 months out of the year, it's like sunshine.
Yeah,
just like in the north.
Well, there are a couple of weird secret societies that I find really interesting. One is Thuggy. Have you ever heard of this one? Thuggy.
Not really.
No. So I wrote a 30-page paper on Thuggy in college, and part of it is because I studied abroad in India, so this is an Indian thing, and it's specifically a Bengali thing, which is where I was living then. And so basically the colonial story is that these groups of Indian people would stake out like the traveling road, and they'd find a caravan, and they'd ingratiate themselves into the caravan and say like, oh, we'll show you around, or we want to travel with you, we're travelers too. And then the first night of camping, they'd strangle everyone.
Ooh.
And take their stuff as well, but mostly the point was the strangling, because they were worshiping Kali by strangling.
So they're like human sacrifices.
Right. And like that's the colonial story, and the reason that it got so far is because it was such a sensation back home in the UK. Like everyone was just like, oh my god, and there was lots of stories about it. A lot of the fiction, there's a lot of fiction about it, and it wasn't entirely what was going on. It's hard to say what exactly was going on, but most of the sources are.
Everybody got strangled.
Yeah, well, everyone got strangled. And the thing is that there is, like, a kind of tradition in Hindu called Tantra. I don't know if you've probably heard of it in context of, like, sex, but that's not really what it is. It's like reversing expectations in order to gain power, kind of. So
like lying.
What?
Like lying, basically.
Like lying. Well, you do things that are socially unacceptable to break those taboos, and by breaking the taboo, you get power. You release yourself from the restrictions of society. So, for instance, some people claim there are people who like drink out of skulls because like dead bodies you're not really supposed to touch them. So that's kind of a taboo. And then the tantra sex is like, I don't understand really. But it's not supposed to last that long, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I think it's the idea of you're denying yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And putting, it's like, so it's that, it's, yeah, let's just leave that alone. Actually, I don't want to talk about it.
So it fits into that tradition in that the strangling, when you're a traveler, you're supposed to bond with other travelers, and you're not supposed to hurt them. You have this kind of covenant going.
Funny, but
you kind of break that covenant. It doesn't. That's like theoretically how it could work. I don't know if this actually was a thing. It could be just that there was a bunch of people who hated English people and would strangle them, and not be sorry about it because
it's like a power like get out of our country.
Right. But they did it to also other Indians, so It's hard to decide how much of this was actually a secret society and how much of this was just random people killing other people.
Violence, yeah.
There's not a lot of Indian sources on Thuggee. But obviously it was a big sensation in the West because now we have the word thug, which comes from Thuggee.
Oh, so, interesting.
Yeah, that's where that word comes from.
All right, so we've talked about a lot of different secret societies and what they mean, and some of what we know about them, which was not a lot, I'll be honest. But let's talk about media, which is kind of why we're here, right?
Right, yeah.
So let's talk about some media sources that include secret societies and why we find it so popular in our.
Right.
Why is that such an interesting idea for like a piece of media narrative?
Yeah. Well, the one I was talking about, the Skull and Bone Society, they're in two different things. They're in Gilmore Girls, and there's a whole book series about them that the person is in the secret society. They're very good, but I find they're very good.
Okay. I mean, there's video games. Assassin's Creed is the one that comes to mind immediately. There's two secret societies fighting each other, the Templars and the Assassins. And the Templars were a real society, and they are still today.
The Assassins are a real society as well.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the ones that I meant to mention, and I didn't. But basically, it was a sect of Islam that a sect of Islam that had broken away from the main caliph, and they were politically minded assassins that hired themselves out. They were very similar to the ninjas in that they were a group of people who followed the same religion, but they hired themselves out. And
Do they still exist?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
As far as we know.
Find out soon enough. No.
It's just
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting that this was an actual thing. Like, assassins, that is an actual secret society.
Well, that makes sense that they would fight the Templars too because of the Crusades and stuff. Like, if they were Islamic, they would probably have run up against the Templars a lot.
Yeah.
Crusade.
Actually, you know what? Now that I recall, the assassins and the Templars were, like, supporting each other in some way, but that was after the Crusades and, like, after all that happened. So I'm not really sure to what extent that is true. But I thought it was interesting. Anyway, what are you laughing about?
Oh no, I mean that was like a lot of not information, but it was interesting. I mean, I wish you had more information about it.
The thing is that I've read these things and it's been so long since I read them that I've forgotten.
Right, right.
Well, I was talking about the video game, Matt. I have never played it, but I've watched a lot of people play it. And the thing that's interesting is that it is, you're talking about now that, talking about the assassins being a real secret society.
Yeah.
In the video game, they totally, like, played that up as, like, oh, we're this real thing and we're going to give you these really cool weapons that you get to go on your own little, like, revenge escapade, and make it about a singular person.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I think, why we like that, like, as far as, like, video games and stuff, because it gives you, like, buy-in, like, you're like, oh my god, I just in this video game, I just watched this dude, like, his whole family got killed, and, like, now I get to go murder people, but, so it's just taking, like, this small, like, part of the larger story that is, like, the assassin society, and letting you, like, play around with it.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it captures our imagination so much from a narrative perspective is because it's these people are necessarily like above the law because they're secret and because these societies have some kind of power. They're allowed to do not like allowed, but they end up doing things that are just completely outside of social norms and the law. So what you're saying about tantric whatever actions, they're allowed to do that. If shit goes bad, if the cops find them or come after them, they can just retreat within their secret society and hide among the secret society and never be found.
Right.
And I think that's one why we really like listening to stories about them. It's
Right.
like a vigilante story, but also it's not just one guy's quest. It's like one guy in his group's quest. Does that make sense?
Protection and
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
well, it's like the Illuminati, and I think, okay, I'll bring up the, like, National Treasure, which obviously was a huge movie about, like, the Freemasons, and then you have, like, the Da Vinci Code,
Yeah.
and, like, the idea that, like it's going down into, like, the lowest levels of society, and it's all connected right up to the top.
Right.
And I think that's why secret societies are so interesting and engage us so much, because it makes us kind of look to our neighbors and say, like, oh my god, do you know, like
Are you on? Yeah.
yeah, are you gonna be the guy that, like, pushes, like, the dumpster in front of my car so that I can't back out that one day when these people are gonna try to kill me?
Well,
are you in on it? I think that's the big thing, that it makes it exciting and gives us that, like, natural kind of.
And in that sense, it has an overlap with like zombie narratives too, because like you're looking at your neighbor being like, "Were you bitten? Are you going to turn on me?" Like when there's low food, it's a similar feeling. Like that's a fun narrative thing to play. Like who's in what society? The zombie society.
Well, I think a part of it too is that, like, I think the biggest secret society in America would be the CIA. Like I have been looking at secret society things, and all of these, like, conspiracy theorists, they have, like, top 10 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Like, 9 of them were perpetrated by the CIA. So I feel like they're very much a secret society, and they're sanctioned, and them and the NSA and all that, it's kind of like the average person knows that something's going on around them that they aren't privy to, and it kind of is interesting. They're interested in it, and so secret society narratives in media kind of brings out that interest.
So that's a good question. Should we even consider like governmental organizations, like secret societies, like secret polices and things like that?
Absolutely. I don't know about secret polices, but for the CIA, like, there's a bunch of stuff they do that even the government doesn't know about. Like, I mean,
And it's totally outside of like what we consider like morally right. You know, I mean, like with the whole thing when they were talking about like the interrogation techniques, you know, and stuff, and how we're like, whoa, were you really doing that stuff? And it's like, now that's come to light, we're all like taken aback, but like at the time, they didn't think twice about doing it, because I feel like, because what Matt said, it's like they had that protection, and it's like, oh, well, who's going to tattle on us? We're all in this together, like.
And that's not the first time they've done some crazy shit, like.
Oh, they're probably still doing it. Like,
and MK Ultra is this very famous scandal that's very true, that they were trying to find a truth serum that would work on communist spies, but they basically like invited people to hotel rooms and dosed everyone with LSD and then like proceeded to do experiments on them. Like, they were just doing some crazy stuff and like kidnapping people and dosing them with drugs and trying to see what would make them tick, and like, this is all well documented, and it came out in the 60s, and nobody thinks about it anymore because it came out in the 60s and we all know about it, but it's just like, that actually happened. That was a real thing that happened, and it's not just like a conspiracy theorist. So
yeah,
I would say that they are definitely a secret society. I don't know about other countries like spy organizations, because I think a spy organization in general does not necessarily mean it's a secret society. But I think the CIA is definitely a secret society.
Well, and that's an important distinction, I think. Like, you can't call every spy organization and secret police thing a secret society.
Right. Because they have some sort of oversight. Like, at some point, someone is saying, what you're doing needs to be in line with the objects of the country. I don't think the CIA has anybody like that.
Yeah.
Well, we like to think they have some like very loose oversight.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think they did, but who knows? I don't know.
So the protection from consequences, the secret knowledge, the hidden knowledge.
Yeah.
And we talked about one other second ago as the reason why people like these kind of stories. What was it?
So protection from the society at large, secret knowledge, and because people feel like it's happening all around them. I don't know.
Yeah, like the thing where anyone could be
symbols, right?
You know what? It's the pattern matching thing, because first of all, we are pattern matching animals, and having that kind of pattern splayed out before you that you can match is very satisfying, but also that you see that in regular life with the NSA, with the CIA, that kind of thing, and you know that it's going on and you'd like to hear more, I guess.
Well, it's something I found, so like, in my job, is that so like talking about like going back to media and stuff, it's like, okay, for example, like National Treasure, which is a very entertaining movie, and I thought, like now there's like 4 of them or something, and
I liked it.
Like, stop. But the first one, it was like, it was really fun and it was really entertaining and stuff, and it totally validates all those ideas of like those pattern matching, so it's like, the idea that like the main family, like Nick Cage's character and his dad, it's like, oh, everybody thinks we're crazy, everybody thinks we're crazy, everybody thinks that we're looking at these tiny, minute details and making up significance where there isn't significance, and then lo and behold, actually, it's all true and it's all real, and everything that they've been saying for years exists, and they finally were able to put everything together, and it totally validates that idea of maybe.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of keeps the wheels, whereas like we'll see, like the average person will see stuff and be like, okay, there's a pattern there, or maybe, like you'll have fun with it. But then say someone who is, maybe watches that and has, doesn't have like a firm grasp on reality or is more susceptible to those sorts of things will see that and is like totally validated and is just like, man, yeah, see, this is true, and it's going to be the same for me, and I'll prove that, you know, the CIA was doing such and such and such and such and such and such, and you know, and it keeps that like fire burning in us to want to be right. Sorry, tangent, but
that's an interesting theory.
Yeah, like when I saw that movie, I seriously was like, oh my god, there's going to be like so many conspiracy theorists out there who are going to be like, I knew it, and like, pulling this thing wide open.
That's so funny. Well, a lot of them are, I was just looking at this list of secret societies that we hadn't talked about yet, but a lot of them are specifically for like overthrowing governments. Like the Black Hand is a Serbian one, and they formed because they didn't like the aristocracy of Serbia, and they ended up.
Who does that?
Well, they ended up assassinating the Archduke of Serbia, Ferdinand, and starting World War I. So that was interesting.
You know what? They actually, I heard this thing. My dad was telling me about this thing that was on NPR.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember now what it was called. Because he was talking about it last night in the car, and so it was like, I was like kind of half asleep and wasn't really paying attention. He was talking about how it was actually, there's new like conspiracy theories about how it was British, like high British officials or like aristocracy that started World War I. Like they were actually behind the scenes doing all of the things. So like the idea of the Black Hand and all that stuff, it's like they actually put that stuff into motion to fire off World War I as a way to expand the British Empire.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
said
then,
kind of,
go ahead, Matt.
there's some like evidence for that?
But yeah, like there's a guy who like wrote a book on it.
Cool.
But yeah, I literally heard about this like last night, and just
And you were asking.
but yeah, like the idea, it's like, oh yeah, like they killed Franz Ferdinand, that's what started World War I. But maybe when Churchill's dad did it.
Yeah. Well, there was another one that had a similar effect. There's one called the Moscow Circle, and a lot of these secret societies are male-dominated, but the Moscow Circle was women, all women. So these women had gone to Austria and Vienna to become educated, and at some point the Tsar said, you know what, no more women being educated, come back to Russia and, you know, be wives and mothers. So they're all these women who had a college education, then came back and were expected to marry and have children and not have a job. And so they were pretty pissed off about it. And so they started to distribute like communist ideals. You know, because communists, they're not going to, they don't expect men and women to have these structured roles. And so they were supposedly responsible for the communist fervor that swept the nation and then eventually, you know, overthrew the Tsar.
Interesting.
So
We've seen how well that's nonsense.
What?
I was like, and we've seen how well that's gone.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that's a good list that we have. We have the secret knowledge, the pattern matching, and what was the third one?
Oh, the protection of consequences.
Right, and the protection of consequences.
Well, and I also think one of the other reasons that it captures the imagination, so I'd say there's four. The fourth one we talked about a little bit is that the idea that it could be anywhere. Anyone could be part of it. So, like, your neighbor could be in a secret society, or you could be in a secret society, you don't even know it. Or, like, basically just that they're anywhere. You know, like, the great possibility of anyone being a part of it.
Like,
I think that's what captures the imagination.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, I wonder what about that is so interesting.
Well, it's like you said.
Go ahead.
We talked about it on the zombie podcast. The idea that like anyone could be. It's like the fear of the other. You know. Mm-hmm. It inspires a fear of the other, just like zombies do.
Yeah.
You know, it's much rational, but.
You know what? That's a good point. That demonizing secret societies is kind of a way of fearing the other, like something you don't know.
Well, we just have a general fear of the unknown, you know, and when the unknown is itself unknown, like you don't know that you don't know it, like it's even doubly so. Like I don't know if you're in a secret society or which secret society you're in, you know, and like why can't you tell me?
Yeah. Huh.
So, circumstances or consequences, secret knowledge, not knowing who's in them, like the fear of the other, and the fourth one,
Pattern matching.
pattern matching.
Okay.
It feeds pattern matching.
So what to wrap it up, what is your favorite secret society media, do you think?
There's like a lot of them. Like I was thinking about it, like there's not a whole lot about secret societies specifically.
You know, I think that it's more, the narrative of secret societies is more in our culture than in our media. It's more about like things that actually happen, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and like since we're not talking about gangsters, like there's a lot of great gangster movies and like.
Yeah, I think we should have a separate podcast for gangsters, definitely.
Right, but like that's like a huge swath of secret society. Perhaps secret society chopping off this conversation, but leaving it just to the secret societies as we define them, there's not a whole lot.
No. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's like I guess like the very Hollywoodized movies. Like I said, like the Da Vinci Code, which is a book, but like, I think those are the ideas that we have of things like that, where it's like, oh, well, there's someone that's smart enough to figure it out and will save the day. Like everything's
well, like Da Vinci Code's one, right? But like what else? Like I mean, I doubt we could come up with like 15 between the three of us, you know?
Sure. I think the Da Vinci Code, Assassin's Creed, and the other National Treasure are really the main ones.
Yeah, I mean, and there, like I said, there's some movies about, I didn't watch the whole thing, so I don't really know how it went. But like the movie about the skulls, which is going back to that fraternity, society. I mean, there are things like that, but I feel like generally speaking, they're not done really well. So no one really cares, and they are not what permeates our culture. It's more of the hearsay and the wives' tales and the rumors and and then I guess too more what you see on the media, because you'll see things every once in a while about people say 9/11 was predicted and that sort of thing kind of after the fact.
There is actually a TV show on right now called, I want to say it's called like Sorority Sisters or something. But it's about sorority sisters, people who are not actively in college right now, but who participate. And a lot of people are really angry about it, specifically people who are in sororities, because it is like a typical like Love and Hip Hop, Real Housewife show. They're wearing their letters, so a lot of people say you can act that way if you want, but not while you're representing your sorority and your fraternity. Right. I fully expect this show to like get tanked because someone's going to get enough petitions signed or whatever to get it off the air.
Well, and here's an idea that I just thought of, like, what if a lot of the secret society media that we have is not so great, like Lauren was saying, because there's just not a lot of information about those secret societies out there. So like we don't know a lot, and so anything that is made about them ends up feeling fictional. And so, like we just don't have the information we need to make a good TV show about it. And when you kind of fill in gaps yourself, it just kind of feels either boring or just too outlandish.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, for instance, I work for a publication that shall remain nameless, and it's been going on for 125 years, and I looked through their archives, and not a single article about secret societies were in those archives, and that's 125 years of monthly magazines. So I think it's because you're right that it's even the truth sounds so fantastical that it's just it's hard to report it in a serious way. Sorry. So I don't know.
Oh my God! Emily, turn off your phone.
I'm sorry. No one ever texts me. That's why I don't have my phone on silent, because no one ever texts me. Okay, so yeah, I would say that I really like those they're young adult novels actually about secret societies by Diana Peterson, the ones that I was talking about, the Skull and Bones Society. She's changed all the names, but that's, I mean, clearly what it's about. So that would be my favorite. I do want to, I have Assassin's Creed actually right here, and I haven't ever played it, so I need to. It's like right by my computer too.
Play
One
it.
and two.
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Well, I think too, like, it was a shoot. Oh, like nowadays, I think you see more, which, like, I think like the idea right now is like really popular. We talked about this with zombies too, how we go through phases with fantastical creatures.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, for a while everything was like zombies, and before that it was like werewolves, and before that it was vampires. And I think a common thing is like witch covens.
Mm-hmm.
Are kind of like the current idea of what a secret society is. Like, you know, it's a combination of a fantastical thing that's like, oh, the truth is too surreal to really like be taken, you know, seriously. And then, but also it's like the idea of like the sorority, and you know, it's like this idea of like induction and some kind of like bond and secret knowledge. So like when we were talking about that, I was thinking about like, you know, like the movie, not the movie, the American Horror Story, The Coven.
Right.
You know? And I was thinking about things like that, and it's like, so it's, you know, it's not a secret society in the sense, yeah, like in the sense of like the CIA or the Illuminati or something like that, but it is in terms of like the 4 things that we've talked about that kind of,
right,
you know, what we are thinking makes up a secret society. It's like exclusion from others, secret knowledge, like protection, induction, you know,
pattern matching. Yeah,
pattern matching.
right. I feel like witches would be a good one too. A good episode of this podcast.
Yeah. So I feel like, I mean, you know, so it's like if we set up our criteria to a lot of things that you do or people do as a group,
Mm-hmm.
it would almost always kind of meet that, you know, or like maybe not all of them. Maybe you have to have all of them to be a secret society, but you might get like 3 out of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of interesting because then anything could potentially be
Right.
a secret society.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered everything we meant to cover. I think this was interesting. And I don't know what our topic is going to be next time, but everyone will have to wait and find out. So we will see everybody later. I'm going to stop the broadcast.